Hey guys, it's Toniko Pantoja, and recently I gave a talk at iAcademy in the Philippines talking about storyboarding. Storyboarding is my primary job in the animation industry, and what storyboard artists do in the animation industry is that we translate a written material, whether it's an outline or script, into visual panels that represent what might be on screen for the final product. This is a pre-production stage of animation, and it's to get an idea of what we might need before we commit to production, which includes animation, design, colors, etc. But the thing about storyboarding is that it's very close to actual directing because you're thinking about editing, you're thinking about shot composition, staging, the sort of mood and emotions, and you're also thinking about how to tell the story effectively visually. Whether I'm boarding for my own projects, whether they're shorts, or whether I'm boarding for a production, whether it's a scene in an episode or a scene in a feature film that I'm working on, I kind of give myself these general points or rules that I keep thinking about when I approach a scene that I have to storyboard. Because these rules will actually affect how the storyboards actually turn out. Now, the first question I ask myself is, what is the point of the scene that I'm boarding? So this then introduces a bunch of other sub-questions, like what is the context or the plot point of the scene? What does it establish? Meaning, what is happening in the sequence that is story related, and how does this overall scene push the story forward or move the story forward? What is the overall purpose of the sequence? Like, what does it highlight or prioritize? Does it reveal a character motivation? Does it reveal a character trait? Or is it meant to reveal a very crucial plot point in this project? Does it highlight a really strong decision characters have to make that actually affect the overall plot and story? Now, the next point I want to make is, in the sequence that I'm boarding, whose perspective is it? An easy question for this is, who is the main character? Or whose lens are we seeing the scene through? And the reason why this question is important is also because it's going to determine how we're going to shoot the scene. Are we going to highlight or prioritize a character reacting to certain things? Are we going to set the cameras and shots based on where the character's looking at or their overall perspective? If you want to keep your storyboard simple, I would recommend just keeping the perspective clear on one character, but it is possible for perspectives to switch between characters in the same scene. But even then, I try to prioritize a certain perspective or viewpoint. This then leads to my next point. What emotions are being portrayed in the sequence? How do the characters feel? How should we feel about the setting? What is the overall mood in these boards? How do we portray that with character acting or the way it's shot? Is this scene meant to be serious? Is it meant to be funny or sad, scary, violent, chaotic, somber, whatever it is? It's good to have a clear focus on what kind of mood and emotion you're trying to go for. And if you think about it, these can also affect the way things are edited. So an example is like, if you want something really chaotic and funny, there might be a lot of cuts, there might be a lot of zany shots. Whereas if you want something more somber and subtle and serious, you might have longer takes, meaning shots that are held longer. A lot of just atmosphere and breathing space. The next question is, how can I show the scene clearly? What is the best way to show the scene visually? How do we optimize the scene so it doesn't feel like it contains too much information and distraction? What is the simplest and effective way to tell this first? What are some visual languages we can use it to make the storytelling much more stronger and sometimes symbolic? Now, here's the thing. Sometimes the writing, whether it's a script or an outline, will have an idea of what can be shown visually, but sometimes storyboards reveal that there is a flaw to that writing. And sometimes a storyboard artist's job is to sort of find ways to fix it while keeping the spirit of the writing intact. What is the overall style of this project? Like, is this production really broad and cartoony, or is it more subtle and realistic? Does it follow closer to live action rules, or does it go way beyond that? Does it follow grounded rules, or is it very stylistic and sometimes even abstract? And the reason why this rule is so important is also because of how it affects storyboarding. If it's closer to, let's say, realism and live action, you're probably going to want to bound yourself to sort of limitations with where you place your camera and how to stage things more economically. If it's like an action anime, how does that affect camera movement? In the world of animation, there's a lot of different genres and styles, and of course, there's people that are better suited for certain types of genres, and there are people who are better at genres that are opposite to that. And if you want to be someone that can tackle multiple different genres, you kind of have to be aware of how these sort of genres and styles do affect the way you board. It's good to have a set of references for your storyboard sequence, so it's good to have an idea of what your stage and your set looks like. When I'm launched on a storyboard sequence at work, sometimes the directors will give me a top-down view of the overall set where the characters are placed and how they might move throughout the scene. So it's kind of a good idea to sort of have that sort of reference so you can have an idea of how to keep the staging consistent. Character designs, they don't have to be final character designs. They could be like shorthands or placeholders for what the characters might end up looking like a representation. And just something to keep consistency throughout your sequence. Now, a certain reference that a lot of people like to use in their work is they refer to certain movie scenes. So when I'm storyboarding a scene for a production or movie, sometimes my supervisors or my directors will load up clips from movies or talk about scenes from other movies to sort of say, hey, this is the kind of scene that we're kind of going for, and this movie or this scene from a show or a movie fits much closer to what we need to try to hit. And that stuff can help. Now, I'm not someone who can memorize every bit of sequence or scene from a movie. That's not who I am. But if you have a certain movie scene that you have in mind that's very closely related to whatever you're boarding, I think it's good to have that. Now, even before committing to actual storyboards, I like to thumbnail my work. I like to produce small, quick, loose drawings to sort of represent the staging that I have in mind, the cutting and the editing of the overall sequence, and I want to keep it simple and readable. Nowadays, before I even thumbnail, I actually do a shot list where I just write down shots I have in my head, what I could visualize, and just write it down in text. And the reason why I encourage you to do this is so that you can think about your scene. You can let it sit and simmer and start making decisions of what shots to use and what shots not to use before you even start drawing. Because something that I encountered was that when I would just start drawing, I would keep going back and forth with my decisions. But that's also because that's a sign of me not having fully processed of what the scene is about. So writing a shot list actually helps you think about it more. So how do I go about dictating my overall camera shot and choices? So other sets of questions to ask is, what are we trying to establish overall? Which character has more perspective or power over the other? What emotions are the characters feeling, and how do they feel about their overall surroundings? How can shots show what the characters are feeling or thinking? How intimate do we want to be with these characters? Meaning, how personal do we want to be with these characters? How close do we want to be with them? How much do we want to be in their shoes? Or how do we want to feel being them? So here are some examples. High angle shots on characters are used to show the characters as smaller or weaker. It's as if we're looking down on them, whereas low angle shots on characters make them look big and intimidating and a lot more dominating and powerful. You can utilize neutral shots where each character is treated evenly. Or having the cameras closer to the character's face and eyes, for example, makes the shot feel more intimate and can emphasize more on us feeling what the character's thinking. What I'm saying right now are not concrete rules, they're just tools that you can utilize. Speaking about the set, you can actually use this as a tool to sort of compose an image or a shot. So you can use props or even some of the background elements to stage the shot, or to come up with something that's quite symbolic. So you could use some of these staging elements or these framing elements as a way to make the character feel entrapped, or compose a shot where the character feels claustrophobic or lonely, or even divided from another character. Maybe there's something in the background or the set that is very story driven or related to the character. And that's why it's good to think about having a sort of reference or an idea of what the background looks like. And then over time, you can think about lighting. Lighting can help establish the mood and atmosphere, but it can also create a sense of accent, meaning it composes the picture of where the main focus should be. Like if there's sharp lighting in certain aspects of the image, you're going to look and focus on those elements. But even thinking about lighting the character, how does certain lights or elements on the character give certain emotions or feelings for a character? What kind of energy does it emit for the character? Yeah, let's talk about negative space here. That space alone can be a really good storytelling element that you can use here. It can help create distance or space between certain characters, and that could be a really good way to show a bit of like relationship. And when it comes to storyboard drawing in general, I try to keep things relatively simple. Not too heavy on details, not too heavy on construction lines. I try to keep it minimal and I try to keep it quick. In storyboarding, these are just called shorthands. A quick representation of what the character looks like. In TV storyboarding, it's not super important to stay super on model with the character designs, but keeping closer to the actual proportions make it feel more on model for storyboards. And so these are sort of like these general thumbs of rules that I keep for myself when I storyboard. But saying that is much easier said than done. And I think the reason why I could say this easily is because it's based on experiences that I've had, and over mileage and over years of experience in storyboarding, whether it's for my own work or whether it's for professional work, only then I have a better understanding on how to talk about it when I approach storyboarding. So, of course, there are many ways you can improve your awareness when it comes to storyboarding, which is, just storyboard. Whether it's just small random slices of life or jokes or little things that you just want to visualize based on writings or ideas that you have, just try to board it. You could try adapting something, whether it's from a written material, whether it's from comics or book, or even from an old video game that you like. Maybe there's like some RPG dialogue that you want to turn into some cinematic version of it, utilizing certain moods, atmosphere, and pushing certain emotions. Another thing that I would suggest, and something that I sometimes do, is just film studies. So when I approach a film study, I would try to copy what I see on screen, shot by shot, but I'm also thinking about what the scene is about, what's driving the story forward, what the overall mood is, how the characters are in the scene, how they're treating each other, what is the scene trying to say. And as I'm doing these studies, I'm trying to think about what shots are being used, how is cutting used, how is it edited. And I think that will just only expand your internal library of certain shots or certain editing that you could use in your own storyboarding work. I think something that always helps me is that I would always show works in progress or storyboards to other people to see if something is clear to them or to see if it works. Like whatever I'm trying to achieve in the storyboard, it reads clearly to them. Because sometimes things fall flat or it doesn't get across, and you might need feedback for that when you show your storyboards. And other than that, I think that's pretty much all the general rules or pointers that I wanted to talk about when I storyboard. Like general things that I have. And I think that's all I want to talk about. Okay, bye.
Interested in learning hand-drawn animation or learning how to finish an animated shot from beginning to end? Have a look at the store where you'll find the complete Introduction to 2D Animation video course, tutorials, and other resources. Learn classical animation approaches, drawing, lectures, techniques, and other process videos. Visit the store through the link in the description below.